One of the reasons I created the channel Crossing the Quantum Bridge was to revisit and document a series of extraordinary experiences that I and members of my close family have had throughout our lives. These events challenged many of my assumptions about reality and set me on a lifelong search to better understand the nature of consciousness and the human experience. In this video, I want to share some of the UFO-related experiences. On their own, each event might be dismissed as imagination, coincidence, or even delusions. But when considered together, they begin to reveal a pattern, one that hints of a reality that's far stranger and more profound than we are often led to believe. What gives these experiences additional significance is the fact that countless others around the world have reported encounters that are strikingly similar. In the chapters ahead, I will present these events as truthfully as possible in roughly the order in which they occurred. The conclusions, ultimately, are yours to make. One of my earliest childhood memories dates back to the early 1970s. I remember lying awake in my bedroom as a very young child watching a large glowing ball of light hovering silently above my bed. At that age, I had no frame of reference for what I was seeing, and for many years I assumed it might have been a ghost. Today, these luminous objects are often referred to as orbs, and reports of similar encounters have emerged from people all over the world. With the widespread use of cameras and smartphones, many individuals are now capturing these strange nights on film. It appears that I was far from being alone in having what seemed to be nighttime visitors in my bedroom, however. Television presenter and psychotherapist Melinda Messenger has spoken publicly about an experience in which a ball of light appeared in her bedroom in the presence of both herself and her husband. She has also described receiving intuitive mental prompts directing her to specific locations where luminous orbs have appeared in the sky and perform unusual maneuvers. Project Unity founder Jay Anderson has described after performing a meditation practice and entering a deeply focused state and directing feelings of love and intention outward, orbs appeared above his home and moved in unusual patterns across the night sky. Reports of glowing spheres are not limited to modern times. There are countless religious and biblical references that fit the bill. During World War II, military pilots from both Allied and Axis forces described mysterious balls of light, later nicknamed Foo Fighters, that appeared to pace their aircraft and circle around them, and in some cases accelerate beyond their capabilities. So what are these recurring lights that seem to surface throughout history? Whatever their true nature may be, they seem to have accompanied humanity for a very long time. My older brother Nathan had an extraordinary experience of his own at around 9 years of age. He was alone at a playground just a few meters from our home, playing on the climbing frames, when a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. It was not something he heard with his ears, nor was it his own internal voice. It seemed to come from somewhere external, yet was received directly within his mind. You are about to see a UFO. Moments later, he looked up and saw a black, domed disc moving silently across the sky above him. He recalls it was completely smooth, with no markings, seams or rivets. The object continued on its course in silence until it disappeared from view. Who or what placed this message in his mind? And if such a voice can speak to one of us, might it be speaking to all of us? In July 1976, while returning home from a family holiday in Cornwall, we stopped overnight near Warminster, one of the most famous UK UFO hotspots in the 1960s and 1970s. We parked near Star Hill, also known as Middle Hill, arriving sometime between 1:30 and 2 a.m. in the morning. While the rest of us slept, my mother remained awake, watching what she described as the clearest night sky imaginable. She first noticed what appeared to be a large shooting star throwing off sparks or flames as it crossed the sky. Then, later, she observed a tiny star-like object moving slowly and irregularly between other stars, clearly not a satellite. Then a bright light suddenly appeared directly in front of her. She woke the rest of the family. The object was perfectly round, about the size of a half penny held at arm's length, or 17 millimeters, or just over half an inch. It moved in an arc across the sky, pulsing on and off, changing from red to green to brilliant white. My brother recalls that even when the light went out, he could still make out the dark circular shape, and both he and my mum had the impression that it was spinning. Throughout the sighting, the object made no sound whatsoever. The object moved off behind a barn on a hill until we could no longer see it. As we drove away down a narrow country lane, my brother was gripped with the fear that we might encounter what people at the time would call a ufonaut, a non-human intelligence associated with the craft. It is often said that these phenomena seem to respond to our thoughts and emotions when they appear. And Mum said she felt they only came because she felt disappointed that she hadn't seen anything. The following year, my mother wrote to Warminster researcher Arthur Shuttlewood, who later published her account in his book UFO Magic in Motion. The next incident I remember occurred roughly a year later at my grandparents' house. We used to gather fortnightly as a family on a Friday. I needed to go to the bathroom, and so I climbed the stairs to go to the toilet, which was situated at the head of the stairs. But as I got there, I felt a presence behind me. As I turned around, I was alarmed to see a whitish grey, faceless figure peer around the edge of the door frame of my grandparents' bedroom, and then it quickly ducked back again out of sight. Now, needless to say, petrified, forgetting my need for the toilet, I turned heel and ran downstairs to tell my parents and relatives. But of course, they just passed this off as imagination. One of my aunts even came upstairs with me afterwards to show me there was nothing there. But I can still see to this day in my mind's eye what it was that I saw that night. Mark Roworth, a lifelong experiencer and psychic medium, has also described childhood encounters with a faceless being. In this excerpt from the Paranormally podcast, he recounts his own remarkable experience.
The one with no face, my sister can't remember it, but I remember it clearly. The other side of the door in our living room, there used to be this guy sometimes, and he had like a white, I can't even call it a robe, it was like a white long thing and no face. And he was physical because we could touch him, and we used to poke him and go under the table in our house to hide from him. But when I called my grandpa, who was there at the time, he couldn't see anything. But so it didn't really frighten me or scare me or enough for me to react in a particular way. So, but I remember I must have been very young, because I used to remember asking my mother about him. I used to call him the doll, and she couldn't understand what I was asking. I knew what I was asking. I wanted to see that guy, that entity, that thing. But she thought I was talking about a doll because I was asking for a doll. I didn't know which way to explain him, or I didn't have it in my...
In the early 1980s, our mother was in Australia on a business trip where she was taking photographs for her work as a landscape fine artist. And during this time, my brother and I stayed at our aunt and uncle's house. Now, just before Mum came back from Australia, Nathan and I decided that we were going to go for a walk. And although this doesn't sound very unusual, it was out of character for us. We left our aunt and uncle's, and we ended up walking through a wooded area until we got to a hillside where we could see a lot of the surrounding suburbs. And we were quite taken aback when we noticed a formation of about 9 chrome discs flying in tight formation. They moved silently until they were out of sight. What remains deeply unsettling is that after we got back to our aunt and uncles, we didn't speak about it, we didn't talk to them, we didn't even talk to each other, and this memory remained buried until many, many years later. So it was about 13 years later, in fact, and we were living in Australia at this point. Though at the time I was starting to have some very strange dreams and some strange occurrences around the house. So strange that we called in and enlisted the assistance of a paranormal investigator. It was while he was questioning us about our family history that something very strange occurred, and that both Nathan and I simultaneously remembered seeing these 9 discs on this hillside, and the memories had actually just come flooding back for the pair of us. Why did we never talk about what it was that we'd seen, and why was the memory buried for such a long time? It was almost as if we'd been switched off. Each one of these encounters is strange in its own way, and yet they're somehow connected by an underlying thread that is very difficult to explain. They raise questions about consciousness and reality, and the possibility that we're interacting with something which is so far currently beyond our understanding. These first encounters have shaped my life and marked the beginning of a journey which is still unfolding. But the story does not end here. In the next episode, the focus shifts to Australia, where a series of extraordinary events would take place. Experiences not just involving UFOs, but also encounters with entities which were witnessed by guests at our house, and encounters that would push the mystery even further. Until then, I hope you'll join me on the next crossing of the Quantum Bridge.